We're going to talk about science. We're going to talk about Darwinian evolution, and we're going to talk about how Muslims should respond when evolution thinks when the atheist pulls out the evolution card as if it's some kind of mic drop moment. We had atheists coming on last time, 3 of them confirming that the Darwinian evolution doesn't undermine the existence of a creator.
Yeah.
Is there any nuances to this statement? Yes, it doesn't undermine. No, in fact, it undermines deism. It completely disproves Islam. Those are the nuances. Hamza.
And they were all saying, no, we don't say this, we don't say this. Well, we know atheists do say this. Yeah. So,
okay, let's go to the arguments.
Bismillah. Well, I think what's very important is that before we speak about anything, we go to the foundation. So let's first speak about why are we talking about Darwinism. Then we'll go into, well, Darwinism is a scientific theory. So what does science actually give you? Does science give you absolute truth? What's the philosophy of science? What is it based on? And then we'll look into, okay, what is Darwinism? And what is evolution? And what is the theory based upon? And then we'll look into, well, is it as solid as what's being proposed? And then in the end, we will go to the implications of the theory, the religious element of it, the political element of it, the ethical element of it, and the sort of existential implications which have had a huge impact in terms of world history. So we'll go through this chronology, but the main thing to keep in mind right from the beginning is that what we want to do is we want atheists to challenge everything that we're saying. So we're not just here preaching to the converted. If you feel there's anything you disagree with, put it in the comment section. We'll highlight the comment and we'll answer it. And once this is over, this conversation, then it'll be a Royal Rumble, right? Whoever wants to come in, whoever wants to discuss, whoever
bring
wants.
it.
Okay. As Hamza said, Hamza, we agree first time in our lives. Yes. Bring it. Bring it on.
My sleeves are already up. I'm sure you're ready as well. Okay. So let's start with science, because I have a lot of comments in the YouTube channel, on TikTok and on Facebook. And the atheists say things like, we have science, you have faith, as if it's some kind of, it's science versus faith. So religious people only have faith and the atheists have science. Now, I'm pretty sure that's not true, is it? The atheists don't have the, science is not the atheist's ace card, if you like.
Yeah, I think, Hamza, that's a very good point you raised. If you remember, like going back to the park a few years ago, if you remember, you used to have this 5-step thing about how a society which accepts these 5 parameters of Islam will benefit. Right, you used to have these 5 values. I don't remember exactly what they are, but
the 5 poisons you're referring to.
Sorry,
you talk about the 5 poisons, about the alcohol, the gambling, the sexual morality, and how the leaders of society encourage and condone them. Yeah,
exactly. So what you were basically referring to were values, positive or negative, which impact society. So the first thing we must realize is Islam came with values which facilitated and generated the modern inductive scientific method.
Utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. Oh, okay, guys, we said to be serious. Okay, we said, I don't know, I cannot... Popo, I need to dive in the seat of Islam once again. Okay, let's see how Islam promotes science. Subboor is the guy that teaches students how to be biased and preaches blind faith in classrooms.
Fundamentally, this is what I want you to understand. In this conversation, there are 2 people who are not actually talking on the same level. There is a Muslim who is looking at the world through lenses, green lenses. And he's looking at the world as green. And there is a non-Muslim who is looking at the world through red lenses. So what's happening in the conversation is the Muslim is saying, this is green, this is green, this is green. The non-Muslim is saying, this is red, this is red, this is red. Why is that? The reason is this is the case is because the Muslim is looking at the world through the lenses of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. He believes that this man called Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the final messenger of God. Therefore whatever he says is true. When the non-Muslim doesn't believe that, he maybe believes in God, maybe he doesn't believe in God, maybe he's a Christian, a Jew, a Lady Gaga, whatever. There are two people talking from a completely different perspective.
The first rule when doing science is to be as neutral as possible. Eliminate our personal contradictions and biases when assessing information. Yet, you teach to classrooms to consider our ideological standpoints when assessing information. Subboor said in other classrooms, when science contradicts Islam, we go with Islam and not science because science is changing. That's the most unscientific quote I have ever heard. Only a crazy person says this thing. You also said in another classroom, I have personally seen, when asked by fellow Muslim, what should we do to counter the scientific stagnation in the Muslim world? And you replied, we need more faith schools. In other words, you need more of this kind of schools to fight the scientific stagnation in the Muslim world. That is what you said. Now, of course, we don't accept the statement that Islam brings the social codifications that promote science. And of course, we all know that the complete opposite is true. Islam creates societies that kill science. And that's exactly the reason for the scientific stagnation we see today in the Muslim world.
This is very important to understand. So the culture that was created from the time of the Prophet ﷺ and then on to the time of the Umayyads, the Abbasids, the Mughals, the Ottomans, this facilitated scientific discovery. And this is not something I'm just making a claim of. There's historians who've actually spoken about how the modern inductive scientific method, which is what we use today, that's the method. So if you look at this live stream, look at StreamYard, look at all of the various platforms that we use and all of the technologies we have in the world, they're all essentially based upon the scientific method. That's how we discovered how things work and how things don't work and what the interconnection is between...
Can I ask a question at this point that I'm pretty sure atheists will be screaming at their screens? Yeah. So, because obviously you go back to the Greeks, you go back to Aristotle's and Galen's and all of these things. So what was the difference between their science and the inductive method that is used today?
That is a brilliant question. Now, the Greeks, they used to use what we could call today proto-science. So their methodology was a bit haphazard. So it wasn't the sort of rigorous scientific methodology we have today.
Okay, let's end this argument really quick because we don't have all day to deal with extreme nonsense. We just will deal with regular nonsense.
And around that period, that 300-year period, the intellectual center of the world was Baghdad. Baghdad. It was completely open to all visitors, all travelers, Jews, Christians, doubters, which today we might call atheists. They were all there exchanging ideas. All of them. All of them. And it was that period where you had the advances in like engineering and biology and medicine and mathematics. All right? Our numerals are called what? Arabic numerals. They ever stop and think about that? You know, who as in America, do we take pause at this? Why are they called Arabic numerals? Okay, they fully exploit the discovery of the zero, create a whole field called algebra, itself an Arabic word. Algorithm is an Arabic word. All this is going on, and it's all traceable, not to some long 1,000-year tradition in Islam. It's traceable to this 300-year period. This 300-year period. And then, so they had naming rights. The most expensive, beautifully carved astrolabes come out of this period. There's a great collection of these at the Adler Planetarium in Chicago, if you ever want to check them out. So navigation, celestial navigation, all of this is traceable to this period. And so something happened. And what happened, as was previously described, I was told, and forgive me for repeating from what you might have heard, 12th century kicks in, and then you get the influence of this scholar, Al-Ghazali, all right? And so out of his work, you get the philosophy that mathematics is the work of the devil.
Okay, that is what Islam did. Before that, people were considering Aristotle. What you were calling them? The Mutazilites, the rationalists. Are you representing the rationalists, the Mutazilites? Subboor? No. You are the Hanbalis, Subboor. The people who ended the Islamic golden era. So, fundamental Islam, the Islam you represent, Subboor, ended the scientific development in the Muslim world.
So when I asked him about his belief in God, he said, I believe in science, and he thought that was a rational answer. And the reason is because subconsciously he has subscribed to scientism, the excessive belief in the scientific method, this sort of idea that science is the only route of knowledge, or it is the main route of knowledge.
Wow, another classroom where you preach against science. Look, this guy, look the screen. Supposedly science is a religion and he's against it. How do we fight the scientific stagnation in the Muslim world, Subboor?
Maybe I can be misunderstood. Look, for me, it's not about balance. For me, it's that if you get your tawheed right in the Muslim world, everything else will follow. Everything else will follow, literally. Why? Because Allah's Messenger said, the best of people are those who benefit people.
So, the way you solve the scientific stagnation in the Muslim world is make your tawheed right. More faith. That's how you promote science, more faith. But wait just a moment. You said something about the scientists.
One of the most comprehensive thinkers was Al-Farabi, who made enormous contributions to physics, chemistry, mathematics, and psychology. He also excelled in philosophy, ethics, and music. For his wide range of accomplishments, Al-Farabi is known as the second master after Aristotle. Another brilliant mind was Al-Haytham, who wrote extensively about astronomy, mathematics, optics, and visual perception. He established the modern scientific method and thereby became the first legitimate scientist in history.
Al-Haytham, wasn't that what you were referring to? The scientific method? Al-Haytham, was he a traditionalist Muslim? No, he was a heretic. Subboor, the scientist you took credit for was a heretic. Islam prosecuted the scientist. So you took the credit for Al-Haytham when in fact he was a heretic. He was in the Aristotelian school and Islam prosecuted him. Did you know about that? Of course you did, as we will see later.
The Golden Age also saw advances in medicine thanks to Ibn Sina.
Ibn Sina, was he a traditionalist Muslim? No, he was also a heretic.
Whose work remained in use for the following 6 centuries. Yet many of the great minds of the Islamic Golden Age were also fierce critics of the literal interpretation of the Quran. For instance, Al-Biruni, who calculated that the earth revolved around the sun and rotated on its axis, challenged the literal creed of Ibn Hanbal by insisting that it was essential to question everything from religion to philosophy.
What was that? Subboor, what was that? He criticized the Hanbalis, you, in other words, and he said we should question everything, in contradiction to what you say now. So these were the scientists in the Muslim world, the complete opposite of what you claim. Heretics and fighting traditional Islam. Those are secularists, my friend.
The irrational position was shared by Al-Razi, who was a scholar of Da Vinci's magnitude and once argued that Islam without reason had no value.
What did he say? Islam without reason has no value. Is that you? You take the credit for Al-Razi. You take the credit for Al-Razi, your most fierce critique, but you get the credit.
Then there was Khayyam, one of the most influential thinkers of the Middle Ages. He was a fierce patron of humanism and expressed secular ideas in opposition to the design of Sharia law.
What? Let's hear that again. Let's hear that again.
Then there was Khayyam, one of the most influential thinkers of the Middle Ages. He was a fierce patron of humanism and expressed secular ideas in opposition to the design of Sharia law.
He was a secularist in opposition to Sharia law.
Another leading scholar was Ibn Rushd, who advocated for the emancipation of women and stressed that matters of belief should be decided only on the basis of reason and evidence.
Let's hear that again. Let's hear that again.
Another leading scholar was Ibn Rushd, who advocated for the emancipation of women and stressed that matters of belief should be decided only on the basis of reason and evidence. It was clear that the Mu'tazilites were fighting back against orthodox theology.
So, those were the scientists, Subboor. They were fighting orthodox theology. And they were prosecuted by orthodox theology. But did you know about this? Or you just got amazed?
That even if we look at the main figures, right, if they were Mu'tazilites, they were definitely heretics. So if anybody did anything good or there was a major figure within the Islamic Golden Age, they were most likely some sort of heretic.
So, you knew about this, after all, Subboor. Yet, why you deceive your viewers? And you pretend the scientists in the scientific golden era were due to Islam, when in fact it was despite Islam. And Islam ended the scientific golden era in the Muslim world.
Okay, so this is obviously not the best. I mean, we're working on a book, Failed Hypothesis. It's been going on for a long time. That's going to have proper academic references, but still here you can get some things. So if you look at science and you go down into, what's it called, the history of science and how science developed, what you're going to find is that you first start off with obviously the Greeks, right? So the Greeks, they basically speak about testing and this type of thing. And you have this sort of proto-science going on for a while. And then straight after the Greeks, like I said, Hassan ibn Haytham, right? He comes up.
Didn't I say so, that you will refer to Haytham a few seconds ago? So, Ibn al-Haytham. So we have, let's see some names here, some names. Stoics, Epicurus, John Locke, Aristotle, Ibn al-Haytham. What is the common of these people? John Locke, Ibn al-Haytham, the Stoics, the Greek philosophers, Epicurus, Aristotle. What is the common dominator? The common nominator of all these people. What is the common thing? Islam. No, ancient Greek free spirit, everybody. John Locke, the Enlightenment, a continuation of the ancient Greeks. El-Haytham, a continuation of the ancient Greek. He was heretic, my friend. And then your ideology came, the Hanbalis, and prosecuted this guy. So, are we done now? Subboor, are we done now, or you want any more evidence? Now, let's go to the next argument.
We lost you there for a couple of seconds.
Yeah, I've got dodgy internet connection today.
So you know what's interesting about the scientific method, the modern scientific method being developed by the Muslims, significantly developed based upon the proto stuff of the Greeks. What's interesting about that is if we, there's this book IERA published called The Eternal Challenge. Yeah. So it's written by Abu Zakaria, who I'm sure you know. He's got the channel Many Prophets, One Message. So in that book, what he does is he not only looks at the history of the development of the scientific method by Ibn Haytham, he also actually goes on to show how the methodology of Ibn Haytham is actually something which you can get from the Quran, which is about testing, which is about testimony, which is about falsification, which is about empiricism. So all of the key principles are actually there.
Really? Really? Look what this guy means. Okay, of course, the complete opposite in limits of psychopathological insanity is the truth, okay? The Quran is the complete opposite of the clear scientific mind. The complete opposite. Look, the closest thing that they could find in the Quran that reminds free reasoning, free spirit.
They may be referring to certain things that happened in the history of Christianity, the repression of free thinking and so on and so forth. But the same doesn't apply to Islam. Islam, if anything, encourages to reflect, to ponder, to ask questions, to think deeply, to ponder over it. God says, do they not reflect upon the Quran, ponder over it?
Okay, that is the go-to verses that demonstrate how the Quran supports science. Hear these people.
Then do they not reflect upon the Quran, or are there locks upon their hearts? Indeed, those who reverted back to disbelief after guidance had become clear to them, Satan enticed them and prolonged hope for them. That is because they said to those who disliked what Allah sent down, "We will obey you in part of the matter, and Allah knows what they conceal." Then how will it be when the angels take them in death, striking their faces and their backs? That is because they followed what angered Allah and disliked what earns His pleasure, so He rendered worthless their deeds. Or do those in whose hearts is disease think that Allah would never expose their feelings of hatred?
Okay, now we saw how the Quran promotes science and free thinking. That was the go-to scientific verse in the Quran that promotes science. This is what Subboor was referring to when he said this.
Which you can get from the Quran, which is about testing, which is about testimony, which is about falsification, which is about empiricism. So all of the key principles are actually there.
Okay, you might ask me, are they insane? And the answer is yes, they are insane. Simple as that. They built a whole virtual world in their mind, okay? That has nothing to do with reality. They might see two apples, they say dragons, bananas, oranges, fly around. They built their own virtual reality. That is what dogma does. It destroys the rational process. It destroys the human mind completely, okay? It's not a coincidence. We see phenomena like ISIS. Okay, what is ISIS? They have the same stupidity as this person, but they happen, their stupidity, to be directed at something evil. His stupidity is directed to something good, supposedly, informing the public. Okay, but the stupidity is the same. Subboor Ahmad is ISIS. Is the same stupidity, the same magnitudes of stupidity. The same way a person reads demons hitting heads with irons and says, this is the verse that promotes the scientific method. What? What did you say? This verse. Let's hear the verse again, because maybe we are crazy.
Then do they not reflect upon the Quran, or are there locks upon their hearts? Indeed, those who reverted back to disbelief after guidance had become clear to them, Satan enticed them and prolonged hope for them. That is because they said to those who disliked what Allah sent down, We will obey you in part of the matter, and Allah knows what they conceal.
Okay, the same way Subboor listens to this nonsense and thinks that is promoting the scientific method. The same way ISIS think that if they put a bomb with nails in a playground, they will go to heaven. The same stupidity, exactly. Just the one is directed in something in another subject, the other is directed in another subject. But the magnitudes of stupidity is exactly the same.
Also, there's this interesting aspect which is very important to note. The idea of peer review, that you take people's works, you bring it together and you systematically test it. Yeah. Now, this is a very sophisticated and difficult endeavor. Even today, a lot of peer-reviewed work is not actually accurate. And there's actually a crisis in terms of replication of peer-reviewed work. But in the Muslim world, there was this rigorous method of doing this peer review, which is not something the Greeks had. So whichever way you slice the onion, we're coming to the same conclusion, which is without the Islamic innovations, you wouldn't have had the Enlightenment, you wouldn't have had the Industrial Revolution, and nor the modern Western order that we have today.
By peers review, Subboor refers to the science of hadith, the chains of narration, etc. That's a flawed method, a kind of broken telephone game, but as a methodology would have some value if it wasn't a big appeal to authority fallacy, totally unscientific way of thinking, and nothing to do with a scientific peers review. As for his second part, Muslim promoted science in history not because of Islam, despite Islam. Islam itself is the death of science. If Islam didn't exist in history, we would have the technology of 3000 right now. Islam takes no credit whatsoever when it comes to science. People in the Muslim world did science? Yes. Humans, Muslim, are great scientists? Yes. Islam is to take credit for this? Absolutely not. They were good despite Islam. They were 10 good. Without Islam, you would have had 10,000 good scientists. Okay? You have 10 good Muslim scientists. Without Islam, you would have had 10,000 good scientists.
Alhamdulillah. So at least this is something that the Muslims watching so far can take away. So when the science card comes out, what do you say, Muslims now, mashallah? Yeah, we know about science. We invented it, the current method. Alhamdulillah. Would you be able to? Do you think that's safe to say? We could say that.
I mean, look, and even if you go back to the Wikipedia article, which I'll chuck in there, but obviously we want to use more academic articles. You see, it's not as easy to say Muslims completely invented science. I mean, that would be very hard to justify. What we would say is significantly advanced it, and the modern inductive scientific method we can link back to Ibn Haytham and these guys.
Let me make a distinction here to understand what's going on. Muslim as a hardware, as a human body, as intelligence, as human characteristics are of the oldest civilizations. The hardware is awesome. The Muslim hardware, the human factor, the intelligence, okay, is I don't know, G5, I don't know the computer terminology. They are the highest level of computer. These are Muslim, okay? This computer costs 20,000 euros, okay? It's a monster of human quality, hardware. The hardware is a monster, but the software is Islam. This is the software. The ideas is the problem. It's not Muslim, the hardware, the people, it's the ideas. Now, if the good hardware takes some of the ancient Greek free spirit, okay, so take some of the good software and make good science, that doesn't mean Islam is to credit. That analogy is very good to communicate what's happening with me. Okay, me as a person, I have slow IQ, cannot think quickly, I have anxiety problems. Okay, I cannot operate in pressure. I cannot. Okay, so myself as a hardware, I am this, but I have the right software, the ancient Greek free spirit. So my software is awesome. That's why I can defeat this superior hardware in a heartbeat. By the way, this is the oldest computer, the Antikythera mechanism. This computer is 2,000 years old. You said something about Greek science. That is Greek science, my friend. Last I ever saw him, carried away by a moonlight shadow. Yeah, on a warning, carried away by a moonlight shadow. Lost in a river last Saturday night, far away on the other side. He was caught in the middle of a desperate fight, and she couldn't find her through. And in the evening, carried away by a moonlight shadow, sighing a sorrow and grieving. Carried away by a moonlight shadow, all the sorrows gonna be to all gone. Far away on the other side, he was shot 6 times by a man on the run, and she couldn't find her through. Stay here, never far away to me. Stay there, take you in, everyone, one day. I'm in the morning, carried away by a moonlight shadow. Was your vision in before me? Carried away by a moonlight shadow. She was alive in a sleepy night, far away on the other side. Will you come to talk to me this night? But she couldn't back up the through. Now the solo. Let's go. Carried away by a moonlight shadow. Carried away by a moonlight shadow. In the middle of 105, carried away like a moonlight shadow. Yes, carried away like a moonlight shadow.